All right, so this one's a bit of a confusing problem. You're given a lot of information to work with, so what do we need to make of all of it? So the first thing that we're told is that an architect wants to design a stairway with a total rise of 9 feet. So we remember that our total rise, kind of from the diagram that we're given there, is our sort of total vertical distance or total height of the stairs. And I wrote it as NH equal to 9 feet because where N is the number of stairs, because we see here that H is each one of these heights. It's the height of each stair. So the sum of them will be the total rise of the staircase, right? So that's why I multiplied just number of stairs by H. We need that total height to be 9 feet. And here I rewrote it in inches because our formulas are in inches, and H and variable D, which is actually what we're looking for, right? Variable D are all in inches, so I just wanted to make that unit conversion. We're also told that we want a height, or rather a riser height between 7 and 8 inches. And given all of, and another constraint is that we want an odd number of steps, which again initially is like, okay, like what do I even do with that information? With all of that, we want to find the necessary tread depth. So where do we even start? Well, what we want to do is we want to find how many steps we're going to need, and from there figure out the riser height. So how many steps we're going to have, figure out the riser height from there, and then using the riser height we can figure out D. So how can we do that very first step, which is actually the hardest, and go ahead and figure out the number of stairs? Well, again, our only constraint is that it has to be an odd number. So here's what I'm going to do. We have this right here, and I want to take it. So let's do NH is equal to 108. And what I want to do is, again, I want to put N somewhere to solve for it. The only place that I can put it is here, because there's no other sort of equation where I can get N by itself. So watch what it'll do. Let's solve for H here. So divide by N on both sides, right? N cancels out. So H is equal to 108 N. So now that we know this, we can actually go ahead and just plug this in for H, right? Because we just figured out that H is equal to this. So let's plug it in right here. We'll get, let's just move over here, we'll get 7 is less than or equal to 108. N is less than or equal to 8. So you see I did that little substitution and conversion, and now we have something useful, because now we have some kind of expression with just N by itself, so that we can sort of deal with N on its own, because we again want to find the number of steps. From here, let's separate this. Let's separate this into two inequalities, because it'll be just easier to compute it. So let's do like this, and then let's just do a second one is less than or equal to 8, like this. So you see, I haven't changed anything. I just split it up into two individual inequalities so that we can deal with it from there. So from here, let's, for example, on this one, let's multiply both sides by N so that we can sort of get rid of the fraction there. So we know that 7N is less than or equal to 108. And from here, if we want to solve for N, just divide both sides by 7. So N is less than or equal to 108 over 7. Now let's do the same thing over here. You can figure all of this out without splitting this into two. I just think it's easier to work with and look at. So here again, multiply by N on both sides. N's cancel out, so you have 108 less than or equal to 8N. To get our N by itself, we want to divide both sides by 8, so 8 cancels out, so you have 108 over 8 is less than or equal to N. Alright, so where do we really go from here? Well, first let's shift this up a little bit, and let's just go ahead and turn these into a decimal, just so it'll be easier to work with. This is the calculator section, right, so we can definitely just do 108 divided by 7 to get N is less than 15.4 4, and here 108 over 8, so 108 divided by 8, that is 13.5. So 13.5 less than or equal to n. So we know that now that n has to be less than 15.4 and greater than 13.5. So let's kind of rewrite it into one single line like we have here. So we know that n has to be larger than 13.5, but smaller than or equal to 15.4. Now let's return to our sort of central idea here. We know that n is our number of steps. We can't have 3.5 steps, and we can't have 15.4 stairs. So how do we work through this? Well, we're told that we can't have less. We cannot have less than 13.5. So we can't make 13 stairs. But what is a whole number or an integer, right, that is greater than 13.5? 14. Right. So realistically, this means that we can have 14 stairs for n, because that would be between these two numbers. Greater than or equal to n, greater than or equal to, can we have 15.4? No. Can we have 16? No, because that's too big. So we go down to 15. So what I'm basically just saying here is that between 13.5 and 15.4, the only two whole numbers or like integers are 14 and 15. So we know that n can be either 14 or 15. But what is our limitation? We're told that n has to be an odd number of stairs. So we actually can't have 14. Our n has to equal 15 stairs. So this was probably the hardest part of the problem. From here, it'll be smoother. Let me just quickly recap how we got here. So we were given a relationship between n and h, okay? And then we were given one for just h. But in order to find what n needs to be, we need to get n by itself, right? So how did we get an expression for n alone? We converted h to equal something in terms of n, and then we plugged it in here. So then we suddenly have this useful expression with just n being the only variable. From there, we split it off into two just because it's a little bit easier to deal with, to sort of just figure out what the inequality for n needs to be. So we got, again, these two values. We know that n has to be between 13.5 and 15.4, but we understand that you can't have a fraction of a stair. It's a whole number integer, number of stairs. So we realize that the only two integer values between 13.5 and 15.4 are 14 and 15, but we need an odd number of stairs, so that's where that sort of key piece of information comes in. So we know that we have to have 15. So n equals 15. Where do we go from here? Well, if we know what n is equal to, we can go back up, we can look at this expression, and we can figure out h, right? Because we know that h needs to equal 108. Well, if we have 15 for n, then we can say 15h is equal to 108. So then divide by 15 on both sides, and we solve for h. So h is equal to 108 divided by, that's supposed to be 15. So what does that equal to? 108 divided by 15. That's equal to 7.2. So our height of each stair is 7.2 inches. Great. So we have an h value. Why did we need to find an h? We needed to find an h because we have an expression, again, at the very beginning of the problem, right, where we're given an expression that uses h and d, and we want to find d. The only way we can find d is if we can get it by itself. You can't have two variables. You need just one variable to solve for it. Well, now we have h, so we can plug this value into our sort of original expression that we were given, right, in the very sort of beginning paragraph of the problem. So we can write 7.2 plus d is equal to 25. So we're looking for the tread depth when the riser height is 7.2 inches, and we figured out that the riser height needs to be 7.2 inches because that's what it has to be in order for our total rise to be 108 inches given 15 stairs. So from here, you just solve for d. So 2 times 7.2, that's 14.4 plus d equals 25. And from here, just subtract 14.4 on both sides. So you get D is equal to 25 minus 14.4. D is equal to 10.6 inches, which is answer choice C. So there's that problem. I know that was quite a bit to work through. This is definitely one of the higher level problems that you're going to see. But I hope that you can see that it's still just composed of a lot of relatively simple individual steps. What you just needed to figure out is how to properly align them. Because once you realize that I can get the number of n through this sort of logic that we did here by using h, then from there you're pretty much good. Just again, remember that another sort of tricky element here is that you got to remember that for n you need to have an integer value. So there's that.